So in that class, he made the point that I can only teach the accidental view. But he also said that there's another view out there that I can't teach.
Mm.
He didn't say which one was true. And I've always held on to that because he said that as one of those let he that hath ears to hear, let them hear
Mm-hmm.
type of statement. And I've never forgotten that. So I've always looked at history as something where it was for me to find out, to fill the blanks, to find out what it is that they can't teach. But they call that, they typically put that type of information in the realm of conspiracy. But much like what the professor said or the instructor said or alluded to, was that the conspiracy part, which they're not allowed to teach, often is true.
Mm-hmm.
Any comments on that?
Well, if we look at our teacher, what was he known for? Steve Coakley, connect the dots.
Conspiracy theorists. Yep. Connecting the
Connect the
dots.
dots, right? So when we talk about connecting the dots, we're actually talking about theorems, not theories. A theorem is something proven by a chain of reasoning, a truth established. So we didn't need Dr. Fraud C to admit anything today with his, I think, 111 pleading the fifths, right? We didn't
That's right.
need him to admit anything because we've already proven by a chain of reasoning and have established truth by connecting dots. And of course, doing the research that needed to be done.
That's right. Okay, so we're going to, in a few minutes, we're going to get to some of the testimony, particularly since all Fauci did during his testimony was just plead the fifth, which is a indication that he didn't want to incriminate himself
Yes.
by speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're as Brother Steve would say, we're up and conscious of that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm going to bring up another file here for us to view. And let's see. And we're going to talk about some of the things that that Rand Paul brought up in the during the hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So one of the things that Rand Paul asked Fauci about, which he took the fifth on, was how did the Wuhan lab come to do the gain of function research that was being done there? And did they do anything to make sure that those facilities were secure?
Mm-hmm.
And he asked, did the National Institute of Health, of which Anthony Fauci was the director of, did they provide funds to do that gain of research in the Wuhan lab in China, which at the time, before the pandemic actually started, I found articles that indicated way back then that the NIH financed the Wuhan lab. And so when the pandemic started, information was already out that that lab was likely the place where it was leaked. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you go back into time, you'll find that they were trying to clean that up, and so they started putting out articles saying, no, it couldn't have escaped from there. It was
Mm-hmm.
really, some type of bad virus that transformed and became susceptible to humans.
Mm-hmm.
But that was part of what the objective of the Wuhan research was to make that type of virus, to alter it in such a way that it would be able to transfer into humans. And so you see here in this article, U.S. government gave $3.7 million grant to the Wuhan lab at the center of the coronavirus leak scrutiny that was performing experiments on bats from the caves where the disease is believed to have originated. Okay, so we see that this was done.
Yes.
Okay. Now that's from the Daily Mail. And they provided additional information. I have the same information that also came from Newsweek. And in the Newsweek article, they documented that not only did they provide that $3.7 million, but that they also provided an additional $3.7 million. So the actual amount was $7.4 million. Okay, so this article goes on to say that the Wuhan Institute of Virology undertook coronavirus experiments on mammals captured more than 1,000 miles away in Yunnan, which were funded by a $3.7 million grant from the U.S. government. Sequencing of the COVID-19 genome has traced it back to bats found in Yunnan caves, but it was also thought to have been transferred to humans at an animal market in Wuhan. The revelation that the Wuhan Institute was already experimenting on bats from the area, already known to be the source of COVID-19, and doing so with American money, has sparked further feels that the lab, not the market, is the original outbreak source. Lawmakers and pressure groups were quick to hit out at U.S. funding being provided for the dangerous and cruel animal experiments at the Wuhan Institute.
Yes. Absolutely. And just to add on to that, we also have the simulation at Johns Hopkins that we know took place in October 2019. So they were already doing simulations in regards to the so-called pandemic and things of that nature to begin with. So their hands are dirty, wherever you are looking, their hands are dirty. Yeah, absolutely. Excellent information, brother.
Okay, and I'm going to bring also to the screen the Newsweek article, and hopefully that'll have the date so that we can see that we were on top of it.
Yes.
Way before, and yeah, it does have the date. I need to. Okay, so the date of this article is April 27th, 2020. Okay, and so it says the controversial experiments in Wuhan labs suspected of starting the coronavirus pandemic. Okay. There's another one that I want to bring up. And this one basically indicts Fauci's involvement here. This one says Dr. Fauci backed the controversial Wuhan lab with US dollars for risky coronavirus research. Then we'll have a little bit more detail on it in these following slides. Here, since last year, the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Disease, the organization led by Dr. Fauci, funded scientists at the Wuhan Institute of Virology and other institutions for work on gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses. Now, Brother Sadiki, you want to share with the people what gain of function research is?
I'm gonna let you handle that.
Okay. Gain of function research is basically research where scientists are exploring the creation of a virus to make it be active, gain of function, to be able to use it in some capacity. Typically, gain of function is basically for bio warfare research.
Yes.
Okay. And so when you hear the testimony or the discussions and questions raised by Rand Paul,
Mhm.
he's questioning the rationale for doing gain of function research and pointed out the dangers of the gain of function research, and that other scientists had questioned the rationale for doing gain of research,
Mhm.
gain of function research, because of the danger of basically what happened, of them getting spread from the laboratories due to inappropriate security measures and ending up being spread to the general public. So for that reason, we know that the Fort Detrick, Maryland laboratory, which by the way is where the AIDS virus was created, that was closed down under the Obama administration for concerns that viruses that were being created in that lab could end up getting leaked to the general public. So they banned gain of function research in the United States. That's why they did the research in Wuhan, China, because
Mhm.
the ban of doing the research was for the United States, but did not prevent them from being able to farm it out to laboratories in other countries.
Mhm.
Okay, so the Newsweek article goes on to say, in 2019, with the backing of NIAID, the National Institute of Health committed 3.7 million over 6 years for research that included some gain of function work. The program followed another $3.7 million 5-year project for collecting and studying bat coronaviruses, which ended in 2019, bringing the total to 7.4 million. Many scientists have criticized, as I mentioned, gain of function research, which involves manipulating viruses in the lab to explore their potential for infecting humans, because it creates a risk of starting a pandemic from accidental release. Now, both Brother Sadiki and I would question whether or not the release was accidental, because for me, I came upon a white paper produced by a think tank that was financed by the Rockefeller Foundation that had done a simulation of
Mhm.
a pandemic. And so, based upon my research, it was planned.
Yes.
And Brother Sadiki coined the term plandemic. You have anything you want to add to that one, brother?
Well, it definitely was not accidental. It was planned, and just mentioning connecting the dots. So that foundation that you've been laying out right now, and what we actually laid out in 2020. When we start connecting the dots, we understand where it was headed, right? So that would
Yep.
take us into, you mentioned the mRNA and the nanotechnology and all those different things that is part of that dragon serum. You know, it affects our body in a way that takes us into what you were talking about earlier. So this is how we know that it was plan, because when you start dealing with nanotechnology, and then we get into all the other things that's involved in that, whether it's cybernetic, cybernetic organisms, biodigital convergence, the data centers now. See, all of these things are connected. 5G, 6G technology, psychotronic warfare, psychotropic warfare, magnetic manipulation, neural dust, nanoparticles, smart dust, nanofibers, molecular robots, quantum dots, microcomputers. These are all aspects of nanotechnology that are obviously microscopic. So this was all a plan, all right, to get us from all of the fear-based programming and the psychological operations and the emotional programming, the trauma-based programming, to get people there to be able to do what it is that we're talking about as far as the dragon serum is concerned. So once that happens, now being that people have been infiltrated with this nanotechnology and other um, elements and things of that nature, which is also important because that got into when we talked about the cancer, the higher risk of cancer. I know I specifically said that we would see, 100, 300% rises in these particular diseases because of, or ailments because of the dragon serum itself. So cancer, strokes, high blood pressure, Parkinson's, heart attacks, and so on and so forth. We said this back then, and we said that time would catch up. Yep. Time has caught up. Now we see the statistics and we see what they're saying, and it's astronomical when we start talking about 300%, 500% rise in these different, types of diseases. So we definitely was on the forefront, brother. I'm grateful that, it's people like you and other people that, did this fearlessly, understood that it was something greater than, what we were being subjected to. And just to really keep it 100, like ultimately all of this is to keep us from being able to truly manifest who we are, the quote unquote God beingness, the quote unquote God personification, that quote unquote Black divinity. So we don't tap into those things and those abilities. And this is why we get into transhumanism and all those other things. And that's a rabbit hole that I don't think most people are ready to deal with when you start talking about cybernetic organisms and biodigital convergence and, man merging with machine and things of that nature, and where that takes us, even from a legal standpoint or a law standpoint. So imagine if Black people, what we saw as being labeled as 3/5 of a people and being treated as such in law, imagine now that you are considered a transhuman or a cybernetic organism because you have been injected with the dragon serum. So now you're not considered a human at all. So imagine what that looks like. All right. And these are things that's already being thrown around in the Supreme Court. Like, this is not something that's 50 years from now. Like, these conversations are already being had. Right. So all this is connected. So when we do talk about COVID, you are definitely also talking about all the things that we've been talking about, transhumanism, even when we get into the central banking digital currency, all of those things are connected based off of the ability to externally be able to control people.
I'm glad you went there, brother. That was an excellent segue into some of the additional articles that I want to show. So you see there's a picture of a man who was awarded the Welsh Award in chemistry. His name is Dr. Charles Lieber. Now, I'm going to bring up this article about Dr. Lieber, and This article that I'm showing you shows that he was indicted on June 9th, 2020. It says he was the former chair of Harvard's chemistry and chemical biology department. He was indicted on making false charges to federal authorities regarding his participation in China's, Wuhan is in China, mind you, and you'll see here, his participation in China's Thousand Talents program. Dr. Charles Lieber, 61, has been indicted by a federal grand jury on 2 counts of making false statements and will be arraigned in federal court in Boston at a later date. Lieber was arrested on January 28th, 2020 and charged by a criminal complaint. According to charging documents, since 2008, Dr. Lieber has served as a principal investigator of the Lieber Research Group at Harvard University, specializing in the area of nanoscience. Lieber's research at Lieber Research Group has been funded by more than 15 million in research grants from the National Institute of Health and the Department of Defense. I'll remind the listeners that the National Institute of Health is the agency that was run by Anthony Fauci. I'll read that again. Lieber's research at the Lieber Research Group has been funded by more than 15 million in research grants from the National Institute of Health and the Department of Defense. And we just read that the National Institute of Health funded the Wuhan lab. And so we'll go, among other things, that these grants required the disclosure of all sources of research, support, potential financial conflicts of interest, and all foreign collaboration. It is alleged that, unbeknownst to Harvard University, beginning in 2011, Lieber became a strategic scientist at the Wuhan University of Technology in China.
May I add to that?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I don't think a lot of people know this, and this is old information. In 2011, who was the president in 2011?
That would have been Obama.
Yes.
Yep.
Barack Obama, Mr. Barry Soetoro. So in 2011, there was a nanotechnology initiative strategic plan. All right. So this is under Obama. 60-page document lays out a projected future to understand and control matter for the management of every facet of human life within the surveillance matrix of environment, health, and safety. 25 U.S. federal agencies were involved. Now, understand, when they say environment, they're not just talking about the environment outside of you. They're talking about the environment inside of you. So when we talk about COVID and these nanobots and things of that nature, that is to be able to morph into your central nervous system or infuse itself into your central nervous system, as well as organs and blood and all the other things as part of our body, but mainly the central nervous system. This is why Hewlett-Packard some years ago said that their vision, and I'm paraphrasing, their vision is for smart technology to be the central nervous system of Earth. Okay, so that's externally, but that same vision exists based on the science of dealing with nanotechnology, self-assembling robots and things of that nature, as well in regards to our human bodies. It's called the Internet of Humans, or the Internet of Things, or the Internet of Bodies. All right. So all these things are connected. So as Sarah is giving this research, understand how these things are connected. These dots are connecting for a reason. And yes, he mentioned Harvard. Yes, those universities are the universities that's involved in all of these different types of experiments and other things that's taking place. Eugenics is part of this. Understand that. All right. So Thank you for that information, brother. And I just really wanted to add that, and that rabbit hole goes much deeper. I just don't want to take up too much of the time.
No, we're gonna go there, brother, because when everything is on the one, as Parliament Funkadelic says, everything that you're saying, we have documentation of.
All day, every day.
Perfect. Okay, so what I just put on the screen is an overview of what the Lieber Group, run by Charles Lieber, does, and I got that from the Lieber Group's website.
Yeah.
The Lieber Group is focused broadly on nanoscience and nanotechnology, and the interface of those areas with biology and medicine. Central to our vision for the future is the capability to synthesize and illuminate unique physical properties of novel nanoscale materials and exploit these structures and other concepts for nanoscience to design powerful new tools for investigating fundamental questions in biology, as well as developing novel, which means new, electronic therapies for treatment of human disease.
Mm-hmm.
We are committed to realizing this intellectual vision through studies currently focused on three major areas: the synthesis of new nanoscale materials with unique physical properties that can enable revolutionary advances in science and technology. The Lieber Group is a leader in the design, synthesis, characterization, and hierarchical assembly of nanoscale materials. In addition, the Lieber Group focuses on characterizing fundamental physical properties of these materials and also developing novel nano device structures and arrays of devices that are used in studies in the interface of biology and medicine. Bioelectronics, research in the interface between the nanoscience and biology has the potential to produce breakthroughs in fundamental science and lead to revolutionary technologies. The Lieber Group has played a leading role in the fundamental science, engineering, and novel technologies at the interface between nanoelectronics, life sciences, from the development of sensors for real-time disease detection to creating nanoelectronic tools for single-cell and subcellular electrophysiology and the development of novel cyborg cells, robots, and hybrid nanoelectronic innervated tissues. Now, in brain science, let's see, there's another one which I'll pull up really quick, and then I'll give Brother Sadiki the opportunity to speak further. Okay, the brain science, the Lieber Group has a large program focused on conceptually novel approach on integrating electronics within the brain and other areas of the nervous system, which involves the development of neural network like mesh electronics and non-invasive delivery method into targeted distinct brain regions via syringe injection.
Yes.
We are actively exploiting this new paradigm for tackling fundamental questions in cognitive and behavioral neuroscience, and as powerful new approaches for treatment of neurological, neurodegenerative diseases, traumatic brain and spinal cord injury, and ultimately enhancing human performance via brain-machine interface.
Yes.
Okay. Hold for a minute, and let me just make one comment.
Yes.
Okay. We saw that Lieber was arrested, and part of what he was arrested for was his work at the Wuhan laboratory where the coronavirus was created.
Yes.
Okay. And so this supports what both Sadiki and I were saying about it being intentionally released, because he was doing research to basically develop a vaccine which is justified by the creation of the virus. So while they were creating the virus, they were creating a vaccine to do the things that we just read into the record.
Yeah.
This is big.
Yes, it's self-assembling nanotechnology or nanobots. That's what it is. That's what the dragon serum is. Now, all that you've explained, especially the first part, transhumanism and biodigital convergence. That's what that means. Okay, so everyone understands, as well as cybernetics, okay, or cyborg organisms. That's what they're talking about, the merging of man and machine, just so everybody's clear and everyone understands. Also, the internet of humans, which I mentioned, the internet of bodies and the internet of things. All right. You are the internet. That's the purpose of the self-assembling nanobot technology, by whatever name we call it, which I've stated earlier: neural dust, nanoparticles, smart dust, nanofibers, so on and so forth. All right. Now, that's not just in the dragon serum or the vaccine. It's also in the food, the water, and the air. So people have to understand this. So even for those of us who did not get the vaccine, we need to do cleanses and detoxes. All right. Because we do have it in us, not to the degree of those who took the vaccine. All right. But it still exists in us based on the reality of what they're doing to the food, the water, and the air. Now, let me also make this clear. Two things. We all know the saying, follow the money. Okay. There's another saying that we have to make sure we understand. That is follow the patterns. Everything that we are talking about, there are tons and tons of patents for. This is the reason no one can intellectually dispute the research and the science that we're talking about, because patents mean that the technology exists. This is not far-fetched. This is not fiction. This is not a movie. Everything that we're talking about, these technologies exist. All right. So when we're talking about self-assembling nanoparticles and all these different things, when I'm talking about the nanobots or smart dust and things of that nature, the food, the air, the water, all those things are patents. They exist. I have over 300 and something patents regarding weather. The patents exist. Okay. So when you're dealing with these things as well, the patents exist. Just check for the patents, just like you follow the money as far as the corporate things and the families and who's involved and who's funding what, who's in control of what. Same thing with the patents. You want to know what patents exist, who control those patents, what's being done with those patents, right? How the patents perform, all those different things. So that's why it's so easy to be able to, for me at least, to be able to break down these technologies that Brother Sarah is talking about, and just technologies in general, because I'm clear on all the patents that exist that corroborate what it is that we're talking about. Sure. And the funding as well. Okay. It's a ton of funding that we can always get into as well, especially in regards to technology. You got tons of people funding that.
Excellent segue, brother. Again, we are definitely on the same page and in alignment. So just to follow up on what brother said and provide some documentation, we have this article here from aimfortruth.org. It says Tony Fauci's biowarfare agenda with DARPA Pilgrim Society just confirmed by a whistleblower. Former defense contractor whistleblower says Fauci works with DARPA on nanobot biowarfare weaponization. Fauci's National Institute of Health funded 15 times indicted Harvard chemist biologist Charles M. Lieber nanobot patents. And here you see the patents that Fauci and Charles Lieber worked on.
DARPA's always been a major funder.
Absolutely.
For decades. Yeah, for decades.
Okay, Okay. And let's see, what's this one? Let me find this one. This is hard to read for me, so just bear with me so I can pull up the file so that I can read it for you. Okay, this one. Okay. So from the same website, aimfortruth.org, it says one Libra patent number 7,858,965 with ballistic transport attributes can fire killer viruses out of nano cannon dust ingested or injected into your body, funded by DARPA, Army, Navy. So that again supports what Brother Sadiki has said.
Yes.
It's not just whether you took the vaccine, because they can also put it in nano dust.
Yes. And for those who are meat eaters, be careful. They are shooting the meats with the dragon serum. So be very careful in regards to the meat that you consume. Hopefully if you do meat, hopefully you're dealing with some kosher type meat or something to that effect. Otherwise, you're in just as much trouble.
Check. So here, this article was dated May 11th, 2020. So we have reported for some time now about the Highlands Group is a super secret technology DARPA weaponization gathering of public and private entities who meet to select promising technologies for weaponization. Never mind that wholly non-competitive gatherings violate the Federal Advisory Committee Act, since Highlands participants profit wildly from their recommendations. Such public-private relationships are the very definitions of fascism. Never mind that the U.S. government uses Highlands Group for racketeering by plotting the theft of intellectual property of American citizens without regard to the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. The whistleblower attended multiple ultra-secret Highlands Group meetings in Washington, D.C. as a senior engineer for the likes of the U.S. Air Force, Martin Marietta, Rockwell General Dynamics, Eaton Group, Leidos, SAIC, Raytheon, and others. These highly secured, no-notes affairs are typical of secret societies. Brian Friel, GovX.com, from GovX.com, said at the Highlands Forum, 1,000 thinkers have participated over 12 years attending the session to which they have the most to contribute. Note the list of participants identified in this site. And let's see, what is the other article that I brought forward here? Yeah. Okay, in terms of, we'll go into some financing here. We talked about how they were financed by DARPA.
Yes.
Now, I think it's also important to note that at the heart of Brother Steve Coakley's research, he's found the Rothschild family.
Yes.
So
yes.
Here, the article goes on to say, or another article from aimfortruth.org, it points out the whistleblower Tony Fauci involved in the weaponization of novel DNA, biotechnology, and biowarfare with the Department of Defense, DARPA, Purebright, Rothschild,
yes,
Goldman Sachs, U.S. Navy, U.S. Air Force, U.S. Army, CIA.
Yes, all the alphabet boys.
Check. It says Wikipedia. Go ahead, brother.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, to add to that, BlackRock, Palantir, OpenAI, Anthropic, Brookfield Asset Management, Digital Bridge, Apollo, Blue Owl Capital, Invita, Adian, Stone Peak, Amazon, Blackstone, Google, and there's more, Oracle, Meta. I mean, we can go on and on. So that's your funding. That's your major funding.
Check. And some of those people that you mentioned, or some of the principles behind some of those organizations, are part of the current administration, which ran on Drain the Swamp, and that they're supposedly outsiders designed to try to take down the so-called deep state. They are the deep state. If you believe otherwise, you are a fool. I'm sorry to say.
Absolutely.
It says Wikipedia hides all of Rothschild's massive involvement in early U.S. biotech. He refers to these people on this list as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, or question mark. The moral basis biotechnology makes money and can rid the world of humans with bad genes. Eugenics.
There you go.
Who have bad genes? How do you define that?
Right.
An imperial British Empire goal since the mid to the late 1800s. They have no empathy, yet whenever concerned about their motivation, they spout the propaganda line that their work can be useful for the children, the blind, crippled, curing cancer, blah, blah, blah. We believe their propaganda narrative is cynical, window dressing for their avarice and Satanism. You see the pictures of Victor Rothschild, Jacob Rothschild, Sidney Brenner, and our man Tony Fauci, who many Democrat acolytes tout as a hero blindly.
Yes. Follow the money, follow the patents.
Check. Okay, there was another one I put up there, but it basically just shows the same information about who were the funders. But, you know, we bring this to light to connect the dots,
yes,
you know, and name the names. And so you heard what Brother Sadiki was talking about, and we've gone into connecting the dots between who's been involved in doing these things, how the virus, the COVID-19 virus, seems to have been, though there's evidence that it was created in Wuhan and was leaked.
Yes.
But there's more support. There's as much support that it was intentionally put out because there were already plans to develop a vaccine for the virus that they were creating. So whether it could have gotten out unintentionally. Maybe they weren't done with it yet, but the plan was to release it into the public, which is why they were doing gain of function research in the first place.
Absolutely. And it was not an accident. When we look at time frames in regards to technology, right? So technology, the way it works is stages. It's called exponential growth, right? So exponential growth basically is just a Western way of looking at what we call Sankofa in the African pantheon, past, present, and future. So you understand technology from 20 or 50 years ago, you understand what's going to happen the next 20 or 50 years based on what's already happened. Then you understand what's going to happen the next 20 to 50 years based on what's already happened. So you understand how it's going to, quote unquote, evolve and things of that nature. So when you look at this that way and you understand the time periods, you understand where it's headed. So you understand, so 2030 is where they would like to have this type of surveillance and counterintelligence through the nanobots and self-assembling technologies and bio convergence and things of that nature. They would like to have that by 2030. So this is how you already know that 2020 wasn't an accident. Okay. Now, also what's important is the people accept it. Right. So this is the point of the programming, all the many different types of programming that we deal with, the emotional programming, the psychological programming, the mind manipulation, the subconscious mind programming, the central nervous system programming, all the different types of programming, the trauma-based programming. That's the reason for it, to control people. This is, we understand, based on the African pantheon, we understand the mind is all. The mind is mental. All is mind. All is mental. So that is what they were specifically attacking, to be able to get people to accept these things based on fear, based on protection, right? This is what they were doing. So for their timeline, this is how they are creating their timeline. All right. So 2030 is a major aspect of their timeline. Now, it's not going to happen by 2030, simply because it hasn't been successful as they would like it to be. All right. But also, we understand when we talk about the so-called singularity, the so-called singularity is when technology is predicted to surpass human intelligence. All right. So this is anywhere from 2035 to 2045 based on the Western scientists. All right. Obviously, I think differently about it because technology doesn't have a soul. It doesn't have a spirit. It's not conscious. It's not aware. It's just simply a program that is mimicking metadata and meta information. All right. But just so people kind of understand and have a snapshot, this is how we know these things are planned. Okay. This is how we know that they're planned. These things are not haphazard. These things are not accidents in regards to what we're talking about here today.
Well said, good brother. So I've brought another document here to the stage to further illuminate what we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
We'll bring this one here to the stage. This is from Freedom Articles. It says delivery system for nanochips and smart dust in a fundamental way, vaccines, GMO, bioengineered food, geoengineering, and chemtrails are all connected as they are delivery systems, whereby this miniature technology of nanochips and smart dust is planned to be inserted into our bodies. Some chemtrails contain smart dust motes, which readily infiltrate the body, communicate with other mites in your body, and set up their own network, which can unfortunately be remotely controlled.
Yes.
If you are fastidious about what you eat and what you expose yourself to, it is difficult to see how you can avoid breathing in a mote of smart dust that was dropped on you by plane spraying chemtrails. With nanochips and motes inside your body, the New World Order criminals can combine the IoT smart grid with brain mapping and other technological information.
Yes. All those patents exist. And just to add to it, let me tie this together for people. So what Sarah just read takes us to the data centers and 6G technology, not necessarily 5G, more so 6G, because those data centers are going to be based off of 6G technology. So 6G technology is 5G, which some people are dealing with now, on steroids. All right. So the way that they will be enacting people internally with the nanobots and the other different things, the different types of smart technologies, through the nanoparticles and chemtrails and those types of things, will be through the data centers by using 6G technology. So this is what people need to understand. Also, when we talk about 6G technology, you are the technology. Now, understand what I mean. Just from a primordial.
Still there, brother? We lost you. Okay, while we're waiting to get reconnected with Brother Sadiki, he was mentioning the fact that there are patents for this technology, and I'll present another patent to support what the brother was saying. Scaffolds comprising nanoelectronic components for cells, tissues, and other applications. This is patent number 103692555. The present invention generally relates to nanoscale wires and tissue engineering in various embodiments. Cell scaffolds for growing cells or tissues can be formed that can include nanoscale wires that can be connected to electronic circuits extending externally of the cell scaffold. The nanoscale wires may form an integral part of cells or tissues grown from the cell scaffold and can be even determined or controlled, e.g., using various electronic circuits. This approach allows for the creation of fundamental new types of fundamental cells and tissues. Due to the high degree of electronic control offered by nanoscale wires and electronic circuits. Accordingly, such cell scaffolds can be used to grow cells or tissues which can be determined and or controlled at very high resolutions. Due to the presence of the nanoscale wires, and such cell scaffolds will find use in a wide variety of novel applications, including applications in tissue engineering, prosthetics, pacemakers, and implants or the like. There was a grant given. It was financed by a grant filed in July 21st, 2016. The date of the patent was August 6, 2019. And look who were the beneficiaries. President and fellows of Harvard College, MIT, Children's Medical Center, inventors, Charles M. Lieber.
Can you hear me, brother?
Yeah, we hear you now, brother.
Okay, excellent. So that's just further documenting what we're talking about. Now, what I was getting into is people understanding that these technologies mirror and mimic the primordial and archetypal technology that we already are. We need to understand that. This is the reason they're able to have the connection that they're able to have with us. This is about energy, so everybody understands this. This is about energy, all right? So when we talk about 6G technology, you yourself are the signal. You understand? They don't even need some of these technologies that we're talking about. They can literally tap into you because of your beingness, all right? So understand, we have biometric signatures, okay? We have bioelectric signals, electrical currents run through us, thermal currents, which are multidimensional, waveforms, data streams, all right? So they understand this about us. So in essence, what this is about is energy harvesting, okay? That's what this is about. So you are input, you are output, you are the battery. Understand what's happening here. Everything that they're doing is contingent on our spirit and our souls. And of course, our bodies. Okay. So that's how deep this rabbit hole goes. You are getting into ritual and sigil and all these different things that they invert. Okay. They take the archetype, which is us and nature, and invert it. Okay. And then they use it against us scientifically. So that's what they're doing here. So again, this is about you not tapping into the quote unquote God or nectar that exists in you. That's what this is about, to take away your power, right? Your connection to the source, your ability to create, your ability to manifest. That's what this is about. This is why all the programming exists that we mentioned earlier. That's why it exists, to make you a shell of yourself. Okay, so understand that this is what we're dealing with. Sarah brought a ton of documentation. All right, the patents exist. We know where the money's coming from. All these things exist. The science exists. Okay, now I don't know where Sarah's going to go from here, but what I can say is this. The number one thing that we need to be concerned with is not necessarily them. It's our own transformation and transmutation. Okay? Because this war, I mentioned 5G and 6G technology. The war is 5G and 6G technology versus fifth dimensional consciousness and awareness and sixth dimensional consciousness and awareness. That's the war.
Absolutely. And to, I guess, piggyback on what Brother Sadiki said, you know, when we look at and to kind of validate what's happening and why, we're in a cycle of time where we've been at the lowest period in the human cycle, right? In the Hindu, they would call this that we've emerged from the Kali Yuga, which is the darkest period in the cycle. Okay. Our Kemetic ancestors would have referred to this as the Dark Ages. And so now we're moving out of that Kali Yuga or the Dark Age, and we're moving on the ascendant path, right? So we were at the nadir of the cycle, and now we're on the ascendant path of the cycle. Some people say that we've entered into the Aquarian age, which is the age of enlightenment. Some people say that we're on the cusp of it. We've transcended from the Kali Yuga, and so we're in the beginning stages of the Dwapara Yuga. So, which basically both of them mean that we're on the cusp of the awakening of human consciousness. We're going through a spiritual awakening. We're moving out of the dark period, okay, which also means that those who have been in control are going to lose control as human consciousness begins to expand. Okay. Now, being aware of the cycles, because they are responding in fear. And the things that you just heard Brother Sadiki explain are about being able to control the awakening of human consciousness and to be able to prevent it from occurring from their desperate attempts to retain control because they fear losing it. So that's why we have the things that Brother Sadiki has talked about. That's why we're in the surveillance state, period, so that they can keep tabs on us. But more importantly, is what Brother Sadiki said, is to be able to control and to retard or stop the spiritual awakening of human consciousness. Okay. And so we see some of the things that they are weaponizing in order to be able to achieve their objectives. I have on the screen some nanoparticles. I'm also going to show some of the parasites that were created by the vaccine that have been found in autopsies of people who have died from the vaccine, essentially.
Yes.
Though they won't say it.
Yes.
But we've had doctors who were banned, who were talking about this back during the pandemic, who were banned from being able to speak on these things. And so I got this information from them who are bringing out this science. They say trust the science. Well, if there was trust the science, why are you banning scientists from being able to speak?
Correct.
So they ban scientists from speaking who were not getting paid to advance their agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's another one. Okay, these were also found in autopsies of people who took the vaccine, and you see these organisms that are non-organic being developed within people's bodies. Some of them resulting in blood clots. And that's why we've had so many sudden deaths. You want to expand on any of that, Brother Sadiki?
Well, definitely when you deal with the nanoparticles, those nanoparticles, the purpose is so nanoparticles are like the enemy of your cells, your neurons, and things of that nature to take control of those aspects of your body. So this is why I was saying that they're going to come in, control your central nervous system. So if they're controlling your central nervous system, they're controlling you emotionally, they're controlling you hormonally, neurologically, same thing, right? So these are the things that we have to understand. Obviously, what you're talking about as far as die suddenly and all of that, facts. So, we just have to really be aware, first and foremost, what's going on inside of us. Because most importantly, what goes on outside of us is based off of that.
Check. Double check on that one. Yeah, we create our reality, based upon what the things that Brother Sadiki just spoke on. We create with our thoughts, we create with our emotions. So if our thoughts and our emotions are being controlled, then someone else is creating our reality.
Yes.
Okay.
All
we
of
had
that
a couple of questions. Go ahead, brother.
Well, I was just going to say, all of that is based off of pathology. So when we're dealing with our thoughts, when we're dealing with
we lost Brother Sadiki again. We'll wait for him to come back in. But
can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you again. Go ahead.
Okay, so I was just saying that. So all of these things are based off of thought, right? Pathology. So when we talk about our thoughts, when we talk about the subconscious mind, the central nervous system, the neurological self, our emotions, our hormones, all these things are pathological. So again, this is what they want to come in and take control of, is the pathology. So when you deal with these different types of self-assembling nanoparticles, that's what you're dealing with, pathology. So they're coming in to change the pathology of your beingness. That's what we're talking about. Total control. And just to really take it there, to be able to literally cut you on and cut you off.
Check. Everyone who knows me knows that I'm a hardcore funketeer. So I typically will invoke some wisdom from George Clinton. And one of the songs that George Clinton wrote for Parliament, Parliament, was a song called Funkenteleke, where he says, "Mind your wants because someone wants your mind."
Right.
Program, deprogram, and reprogram.
Yes.
And that's exactly what we see unfolding. Based upon what we've been able to research and show you and explain lucidly by Brother Sadiki. We have a couple of questions and comments in here. Brother Jamal says, "What about what's called COVID-19 vax shedding from those that took the jab, infecting everyone else in the rest of the biosphere? due to the exhaling of particles by the victims.
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely an ecosystem. Again, so that's why we have to be vigilant in regards to, what we're doing with ourselves physically, emotionally, spiritually. We have to be vigilant because, again, the war is on and for our minds. Okay. And that's just something we have to understand. And as far as Brother Jamal, Brother Jamal, nothing but honor and reverence for you, brother. Man, I love you and appreciate you. Um, there was a time when your venue was probably the only venue where I could really speak freely in a time where people didn't want to hear it. And that's in that time, 2007 to 2013, the Barack Obama era. So I appreciate you, brother. I want you to know that.
I say. And Sister Sandra Muhammad asks, can you explain six-dimensional?
Okay, so all right. So you have third dimensional consciousness, which is the physical material world. So our physical bodies, mainly what we're dealing with here in the physical, right? That's third dimensional consciousness, um, fear-based consciousness, trauma, that type of thing. That's the third dimension. Okay. Fourth dimension is more of the gateway to fifth dimensional consciousness. So when we talk about fourth dimensional consciousness, we're talking about those who are seeking, those who are coming into the knowledge, coming into awareness. Um,
And those basically, before as we get back to or wait for Brother Sadiki to come back, basically those who are on the path of awakening, those who are seekers and looking to transcend um, physical consciousness. Okay, you're back. Yeah,
okay. You can hear me, brother?
I was just explaining that,
Yeah.
what you would want to impart to them, that, those people who are seeking to transcend identification with physical
Yes.
consciousness are on the path to awakening. But yeah, go ahead.
Excellent. Excellent. Perfect. And so fifth dimensional consciousness, we're talking about that person who is now awakened, that person who is now operating in higher levels of consciousness, so to speak. So now they're implementing the consciousness and awareness. They're manifesting the consciousness and awareness. Now you're talking about mastery. You're consistent in that mastery. You're also talking about the ability to tap in and the many things that means. So we're able to tap into our gifts and things of that nature. All right. The higher essence of our beingness, the so-called quote unquote God consciousness. All right. That's your fifth dimensional consciousness. Sixth dimensional consciousness is just the next level from there. All right. So again, same as fifth dimensional, it's just you're taking it to the next level. So that's what we're talking about.
Excellent.
And you had a G technology for all of them. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so let's do this. We're going to bring, hopefully, if I can, maybe I'll have to remove some other things. Okay, so I want to go ahead and show. Can we bring this? Okay, I gotta move everything off. I want to show just a few excerpts from the Fauci testimony and the comments from Rand Paul. So let's bring that to the stage. So we're going to go ahead and show that.
Yeah.
1 million Americans died from COVID-19. Some estimate as many as 15 million people died worldwide from COVID-19. Publicly, Anthony Fauci promoted the theory that the virus arose naturally, while privately, he was well aware of a mountain of evidence suggesting the virus originated in the lab. The American people deserve answers. The American people deserve to know why dangerous research was funded by NIAID in a totalitarian country in a lab that lacked acceptable safety standards. The decision to fund dangerous gain-of-function research in Wuhan, China, will likely go down in history as perhaps one of the worst public health decisions. Frankly, the American people deserve an apology. I hope today Dr. Fauci will come clean, admit it was a mistake to fund dangerous research in China, admit that the risk of this dangerous research exceeded any possible benefits, ask forgiveness, and pledge to help our government devise safeguards so a man-made epidemic never happens again. Instead of an apology, you have for years avoided responsibility. Regarding the lockdowns, you argue that you did not personally issue every lockdown order, close every school, or impose every mandate. But officials across the country invoked your authority to justify these decisions. And you presented your recommendations not as judgments open to debate, but as dictates of science itself. Your own words demonstrate that you understood the influence you exercised. On March 14th, 2020, you wrote that the task force recommendations were driven by me, yourself, Deb, and CDC. The next day, you wrote that you had convinced Mayor Bill de Blasio to close the New York City schools, so you were involved. That same night, Governor Gavin Newsom's chief of staff told you that the governor had decided to close California schools, bars, and restaurants after watching you on television. Presidents, governors, mayors, school boards, corporations, and Congress all bear responsibility for the decisions they made. The COVID lockdown, however, could never have been inflicted without you aiding and abetting the crime. Children lost years of education. Small businesses built over a lifetime disappeared. Patients delayed cancer screenings and other medical care. Families were separated from dying relatives. Workers were ordered to accept a medical procedure or lose their jobs. Worship assembly, employment, education, and travel were restricted in the name of science. While you did not impose every restriction, you used your public authority to justify them. While you concluded publicly that COVID occurred naturally, your private record tells a different story. In early 2020, your hand-picked virologist warned that the virus appeared to have been manipulated in the lab. In a conference call concerning the origin of the virus, all but two of the participants believed deliberate insertion was possible. Your concern was not merely theoretical. That same week, you led an urgent effort to determine whether your own agency had funded the research related to these experiments that were now under suspicion. Hours later, your assistant reported that the Wuhan experiments had indeed been reviewed and approved by the NIH. Those were not the actions of officials who believed that a research-related origin was an absurd conspiracy theory. They were the actions of officials urgently trying to determine whether their agency funding was connected to the research under discussion, connected to the pandemic. You could not hide that your agency had funded the Wuhan research or your long history of defending gain-of-function research. The only alternative left was to argue that COVID-19 did not originate in the Wuhan lab. You were not a detached observer. You had an institutional interest in the public believing that federally funded research had nothing to do with the pandemic. It was a conflict of interest from the very beginning. The authors of the proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2 privately had serious doubts about a natural origin. Within days, though, they flipped, and they all wrote in proximal origin that the virus was almost certainly not a laboratory construct. That paper was then used by the government and the media and you to discredit Americans who were asking the same questions that you and the authors were asking yourselves privately. You even cited proximal origin from the White House podium. You held it out as evidence that the virus could not have been engineered, but you didn't disclose your role in the discussions that preceded the writing of the paper. You did not disclose the author's original concerns. You did not reveal that you had been part of the paper, that you had read and offered editorial comments on the paper before it was published, before you began using it as evidence that it couldn't have originated in the lab. You did not disclose that you had immediately investigated yourself whether NIAID funding might be connected to the research. You did not tell the American people the full story. Duly released private messages indicate that the doubts with the authors and others didn't disappear after the publication. So while this was being waved at the White House to show that it couldn't come from the lab, the authors were still privately continuing to assign a meaningful probability to a laboratory origin, one thing in public and another in private. Some of the same scientists discussed avoiding email and carefully managing communications that might eventually be obtained under the Freedom of Information Act. The pattern is straightforward. Privately, there was alarm, then an immediate inquiry to see if NIAID's possible exposure to funding, then a rapid public declaration of certainty, continued private doubt, and then years of resistance to disclosure. The question is why? And the only logical answer is that your primary concern was avoiding culpability. Your primary concern was hiding the fact that you had approved the funding for this dangerous research. Your support of gain-of-function research is extensive and long-standing. In 2011, your agency funded Ron Fauci's laboratory when it mutated the avian flu until it could spread through the air between mammals. This was the tipping point. This is when others became worried. You funded this. You advocated for this. The federal government's own biosecurity board, though, recommended withholding the details of these experiments because of the danger the research posed. People were concerned that publishing it was publishing a roadmap to creating bioweapons around the world. But you sided with the gain-of-function scientist Fauci and argued that the benefits of publishing the research far outweighed the risks. You defended this avian flu transmissibility experiments as critical research. You wrote that even if a scientist became infected and triggered a pandemic, the benefits of the gain-of-function experiments outweighed the risk. In 2014, your agency, NIAID, began funding the Wuhan bat coronavirus work. In 2015, Ralph Barrick and the Chinese scientist Shi Zhengli published NIAID-supported research combining a bat coronavirus spike protein with a SARS backbone. The resulting virus could infect human airway cells. It's a novel virus that now can infect human cells. It gained transmissibility, it gained function. In 2018, the same group of scientists, EcoHealth, Barrick, Shi, and their collaborators submitted the diffuse proposal, which involved the insertion of a furin cleavage site into the coronavirus. DARPA rejected it as too dangerous. When COVID was sequenced, though, early on in January of 2020, within days, scientists discovered that, lo and behold, it had a novel furin cleavage site, just as had been proposed in the diffuse project. This was either an extraordinary coincidence or a smoking gun, evidence that the Chinese had created COVID-19. It made the laboratory origin question more legitimate, and it made your categorical public denials indefensible. On May 11th, 2021, you told the Senate, the NIH has never, ever, and does not now fund gain-of-function research in Wuhan, in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. When I gave you the opportunity to correct the record, to reconsider the statement, you responded that you had never before lied to Congress. We were then told that only the government's narrowest regulation of definition counted here, that you could define gain of function in one way in which this wasn't gain of function, in which all of the common sense of the world would be thrown out, all of the idea that the mice were dying and the virus was more transmissible didn't matter because you had a technical definition that allowed you to fund it. But the real question is, was it dangerous? Was it a wise decision to fund this? And you haven't deviated from that. You've never admitted that it could have been a mistake funding this research in China. The American people weren't asking for a semantics debate over what is gain of function. They were asking, does common sense say this research was dangerous in Wuhan? They wanted to know whether their money-funded experiments in Wuhan that made bat coronaviruses better able to infect humans? The answer is yes. They wanted to know whether NIAID adequately supervised their work. The answer is no. When you defended this research, you described its benefits in the broadest terms. But when Congress demanded accountability, you hid behind the narrowest possible definition. You can't have it both ways. Your conduct concerning federal records raises further questions. It is a crime to destroy federal records. Yet our investigation reveals your assistant diligently reported that she deleted tons of emails. In 2024, you testified that you did not delete federal records. Who's telling the truth, you or your assistant? The committee has obtained repeated instructions from you telling federal officials to delete communications. On February 2nd, 2020, one day after Origin's call, you told Francis Collins, please delete this email after you read it. The committee asked for your voluntary cooperation to come today. Your appearance had to be compelled by subpoena. You're here today under duress. You're here today because of the court ordering it. President Biden issued you a sweeping pardon extending back to 2014, the same pardon he gave to his son Hunter. A pardon may protect a person from criminal prosecution, doesn't rewrite history. It does not erase documents. It does not convert a misleading statement into a truthful one. And it does not prevent Congress from establishing what happened. There will be another pandemic. There will be another crisis. And there will again be officials who insist that uncertainty must be hidden for the public's own good. They will demand obedience. They will invoke science. I am the science, as though it were a commandment. They will argue that government officials cannot be questioned because questioning them would undermine public trust. They have it backwards. It is secrecy that destroys trust. It is arrogance that destroys trust. It is censorship that destroys trust. And it is the refusal to admit error that destroys trust. That loss of trust may be your most damaging legacy. Trust can't be ordered. It has to be earned. No scientist is above scrutiny. No government official is beyond accountability. And no public servant has the right to treat the suffering of millions of Americans as a footnote to his preferred version of history.
Websites your competitors don't want you to know, part 2.
Thoughts, Brother Sadiki?
Say it again, brother.
Any thoughts?
Well, so what we know now, for sure, if you didn't know, what we knew in 2020, social distancing, hoax, masks, hoax, lockdowns, hoax, social media censorship, hoax, the media, hoax, ABC, NBC, Fox, CNN, CNBC, on and on and on and on. All right. Now, let me also say this because they put so much focus on 2020, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you go to your grocery stores, listeners, every aisle and almost all the food in that grocery store has the dragon serum. Because who is it related to? Bill Gates.
Sure. And I'll add, as you listen to Rand Paul's line of questioning, he talked about the gain of research, which we started out the show discussing. And we provided documentation that his agency now, he mentioned the NIAID. The NIAID is a division within the National Institute of Health. We showed documentation that the NIH, the National Institute of Health, financed with a grant the Wuhan lab research to the tune of $7.4 million. We showed that they were engaged in gain of function research. We also showed that they were concurrently developing the vaccine as they were doing the research. So whether or not it's escaped from the Wuhan lab, they were intentionally doing this research. And you heard in the testimony that Fauci was a fierce advocate of gain of function research, which is evident in the fact that since they were banned from doing the research in the United States, they were undeterred in doing the gain of function research. That thus they farmed it out to the Wuhan laboratories to do. Okay, so we've provided that information, and I discussed this and provided this documentation back in 2020.
Yes.
Long before now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so now the information is coming out, but when it's put out into the public for him to discuss, because it's well documented, particularly now, Fauci was compelled to take the fifth.
All you do is go to this website, and it lets you find out exactly.
I now recognize Senator Peters for his opening remarks.
Okay, we'll skip him because he's just a Democratic shill who's there only to defend Fauci.
Mm-hmm.
These are the kinds of forward-looking matters that are worthy of this committee's time. Instead,
now I'll just kind of just summarize what he said. He
Okay.
basically just goes on and accuses Rand Paul of just attacking the Honorable Anthony Fauci, who should be outed as a hero. But he doesn't refute any of the information that Rand Paul put forth. Not one bit. It was really just propaganda in defending him, but he provided no support for his defense.
we are here continuing the chairman's year-long focus on one individual. History tells us
Right. So again, he's just accusing him of just attacking Dr. Fauci for no reason, irregardless of all the information that he just provided.
That the committee has denied access to the minority to records is categorically false. This is the most transparent investigation in the history of Congress. We actually created a website and we put all of the information on the website. It continues to operate. The reason it hasn't been accessed is no Democrat ever signed up for it. Not one Democrat. We told them the access. They never asked for the access code. They haven't been on the website because they have not cared about the investigation.
As Brother Steve used to say, don't confuse me with the facts.
It's a practice in this committee to swear in the witness. Dr. Fauci, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you will give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
We're looking for people 40 plus who want to actually master Claude.
Now, of course,
days. No free time needed.
Fauci,
just 10 minutes a day.
Fauci gives no testimony.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, you're recognized for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Member Peters, members of the committee, I served at the NIH for over 54 years, 38 of those as director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Over that period, I proved that I believe in and respect the value of legitimate congressional oversight. In fact, I testified before and or briefed Senate and House Senate and House committees well over 200 times over those 38 years. During and after the COVID pandemic, I have appeared multiple times for hearings in the Senate and the House, usually under oath, and sat for several days-long transcribed sworn interviews, answering questions about the very issues that are now the subject of this hearing. However, given Senator Paul's obvious obsession with calling for my prosecution, his repeated slanderous comments about me, and recently his publicly releasing my unredacted personal diary aimed at embarrassing and intimidating me, the only conclusion I can reach is that the sole reason he is calling me before this committee is to get me to say something, anything, that could vindicate his repeated public pledges that I end up, in his words, quote, behind bars, unquote.
In other words, tell the truth. And for the audience, I do want to make this point that neither Brother Sadiki or I are Republicans or Democrats, liberals or conservatives. We don't partake in that game because that's all it is. It's an illusion to pull the wool over the eyes of the public.
I concur.
Sides are controlled by the same people. You want to elucidate on that any further, Brother Sadiki?
Oh, well, I definitely concur. We know what controlled opposition is. We understand cognitive dissonance. We also understand confirmation bias as well as Stockholm syndrome. So we're clear on how these things operate and how they work, the Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution. So yes, it is a stage. What we're listening to is a stage. For the listeners, ask yourself, so after all of this, what does that do to the people who are dead? What does that do for the people who will suffer the many different ailments because they took the dragon serum? How does this help them? So the point is the damage is done.
Check. Right. See, these hearings that are happening now should have been executed back in 2020 when it was going down, before the vaccine was trotted out there. So as Brother Sadiki said, the damage is done. The horse is out the barn. No need in closing the door now. But, you know, it's a show to convince people to believe that there's actually some concern about what occurred.
Yes.
Any reasonable person who has followed his unhinged obsession with me would readily come to the same conclusion.
Did you hear anything that Rand Paul said that sounded unhinged?
No. Not at all.
He was, everything that he said was consistent with what we talked about at the outset of the show.
Yes.
Which we documented.
Therefore, although it pains me to do so, because of the respect I have for the legislative branch of government and my decades-long record of cooperating with Congress, under the advice of my attorneys, I will invoke my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution to refrain from answering your questions. Thank you.
And we will remind you that invoking the Fifth is to prevent the witness from saying something that may incriminate themselves.
Mm-hmm.
We will now begin a round of questioning. Dr. Fauci, your testimony today is compelled by a lawful subpoena. As you know, it's a crime under 18 USC section 1001 to knowingly make a material false statement to Congress with a penalty up to 5 years of imprisonment. Understanding that you are under oath, the American people would like to understand your reasoning, your rationale for why you chose to fund the research in Wuhan. There have been, intelligence agencies, the CIA, the FBI, the DOE, have all come to the conclusion that more likely than not, the virus came from the lab in Wuhan. And so we'd like to know, what was the rationale? What was the discussion? How, what went behind the decision to fund the research in Wuhan? How did you come to the conclusion that a totalitarian country would be capable of doing this in a BSL-2 lab, a lab that lacked the security? What was the reasoning? And are you sorry, basically, for making the decision? Would you, given another chance, say, well, gosh, circumstances now, as I know, maybe it wasn't a wise thing. Can you explain to the committee why you chose to fund this dangerous research in China?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Okay, as we pointed out, this is not a slanderous comment that Rand Paul made, because we've documented that the National Institute of Health did indeed finance the Wuhan laboratory. And I can document from my research that the intelligence agencies also did come to that conclusion, though it was not made readily available. That information or their reports were not readily made to the public. But I do recall reading documents where the intelligence agencies did say that, and there was some pushback from the administration, from the administration's intelligence apparatus, but the CIA, the FBI, were pretty much said that they were 75% certain that it emerged from the laboratory, and that they did not believe that it naturally occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm not going to go. We're almost at an hour and a half. Maybe I'll just play a little bit more. Obviously, Dr. Fauci just invokes the fifth all the way through, but some of the questions that Rand Paul raises are legit, but as we pointed out, these things should have been raised 6 years ago.
Booking.com, booking.yeah.
Look, this is the easiest consent banner I have ever set up on a website. We are talking...
In the red folder on your table is a copy of Section 192 of Title II of the U.S. Code. Your counsel has been provided a copy as well. That section makes it a crime for a witness appearing under subpoena to refuse to answer any questions pertinent to the question under inquiry. Do you have that in front of you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Let the record record that the witness has refused to answer whether there's a folder in front of him based on his Fifth Amendment right. It is true that you're appearing under direction of our subpoena to provide testimony on matters under consideration by the committee, including the origins of COVID-19, risky life sciences research, and your tenure as a federal government employee. Additionally, you've been provided a full and unconditional pardon dated January 19th, 2025, for any offenses against the United States which may have been committed or taken part from January 1st, 2014 through the date of the pardon for a 10-year period, arising from or in any manner related to your service as director of the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases, as a member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, or the White House COVID-19 response team, or as chief medical advisor to the president. Have you refused this pardon, or do you have any reason to believe this full and unconditional pardon, this grant of immunity, would somehow require you to plead the Fifth Amendment?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Based on the facts presented, I'm going to direct you to answer the questions. The committee has issued a valid subpoena. They have requested your presence here. The questions are very pertinent to your decision-making as head of NIAID, as well as a chief advisor to the president. Do you still refuse to answer the questions?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution.
Let's see.
Okay, we'll just leave it there. He does ask many of the questions that are related to the things that we discussed on the show. And of course, Dr. Fauci invokes the Fifth Amendment. I repeat, if he's invoking the Fifth Amendment, it's because he's concerned that he may incriminate himself. And so for him to actually answer any of the questions, he would either be compelled to lie or admit the truth of what he did. And there is plenty of documentation, as we've covered, that he was involved not only in the development of the coronavirus itself, but also in the technology that went into the vaccine, which we also know was not designed to combat the virus, but it was to infuse basically an operating system within the human body.
That's key.
Speak on that, brother.
What you just said. Operating system. So we hear about ChatGPT, Claude, all these different operating systems. This is why I mentioned earlier, we are the archetype. These different technologies are mimicking us. We are the original operating system. All right. Now, what they are attempting to do, again, is to invert us. All right. So instead of us being the operating system, they want technology to be the operating system that is controlling us. All right. So the operating system part is very important. So when we deal with these technologies that they call operating systems, which function based off of how we function as humans, right? Matter of fact, you have 5 categories of warfare. All right. You have the air, the land, the sea, space. Now listen to the next 2. And cyber. So that's 5. Now it's the 6th, which is the human domain. What they are focused on is the cyber aspect of warfare and the human domain, which is us, our beingness, and merging those 2 things. Okay, because when we say cyber, that's what we're talking about, nanotechnology and all that. That's cyber. It's meta information and metadata. Okay, so that's what we see that's taking place. These are operating systems that we're talking about. Self-assembling nanobots or whatever type of technology that's nano, those are operating systems. This is why I mentioned the central nervous system, the subconscious mind, all these different things, the neurons that it will infiltrate our bodies and control. It's about operating systems. Even when we deal with ancient African technology, those are all operating systems. I don't care if you're dealing with the Yoruba, the Akan, the Dogon, Kemet, the Kikiyu, whoever you're dealing with, the Twa, the Mbuti, the Baka, you are dealing with operating systems. From the language to our bodies, to the art, to the rituals, to the sigils, to the traditions, to the ancestors, and all of the above, the cosmos, nature, all of those are operating systems. And if you notice, what we see happening is every aspect of those operating systems being inverted. Pay attention. They are at war with everything, including us and just everything that exists within us, our beingness. Even when we go to the soul, when we go to the spirit, this is the reason they are attempting to define for you what the soul is, what consciousness is, what awareness, what all these different things are. Sentience, to make you think that these artificial technologies are sentient. They have a soul, they have a consciousness, they have emotions. They will never have those things. Only we have those things. But due to the programming, we see it the way they have other people see it, how they have programmed people to see it. Hence the deification of technology, hence the slogans, hence all of the different type of programming that they use. AI is the future. Now everybody's regurgitating that AI is the future. But what does that mean? It's a surveillance state. It's a state of counterintelligence. That's what that means. It's a prison. It's a digital prison. It's a algocracy is what it's called. A government that's basically ran and functioned through algorithms. Okay. So Rob mentioned how we don't deal with the Republican and Democrat and all of that, right? Now, when you understand how the algorithms work, when you deal with voting, you understand how the racism and the bias, the discrimination is in the algorithm already. So the algorithm already understands, based on programming, how many black voters are in a certain area or region based on their names, which takes us to the census. This is how they determine
we lost Brother Sadiki, but he's say that they use the census to determine.
Yeah, so the census, you got me, brother?
Go yeah, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, so this is the reason for the census, so they can know who is who, okay? Based on names. So they know how many James Williams are black and where they are, their region, that type of thing. And it's done based on the algorithm. See, people don't understand how this government, how entrenched they are in technology. Okay, so that algorithm is key. Now, when I was dealing with algorithms, AI, and binary codes being the new racism and discrimination almost 20 years ago, people said I was crazy. Then you had the documentary or movie come out on Netflix called Coded Bias that the sister did that was dealing with, this was 2021, I think, or 2020, that was dealing with discrimination in algorithms called Coded Bias. All right. So this is how they are now implementing the racism, the discrimination, and the bias. It's through the algorithm. I hope I didn't go on a tangent, brother.
No, that's excellent. And I want to point out that I did not haphazardly use the term operating system.
Yes.
The reason that I use that term was that I read that directly from Moderna's website.
I love it.
That's exactly what they said that the objective of their mRNA technology was to develop an operating system within the human body.
Mm.
Okay.
So what becomes the genotype and the phenotype now?
Check.
You see what I'm saying? What becomes the thought process? What becomes the emotional beingness of a person? What becomes the hormonal structure of a person? So now the entire ecosystem and biosphere of who and what we are now becomes this artificial operating system that will be controlled through different types of nanobots or nanoparticles that will be controlled from an outside source dealing with 5G or 6G technology and the data centers. Now, the data centers are not just on land. The data centers are also in space.
Check.
So this is what we're dealing with, y'all. It's beyond just the water that the data centers are using, the usage of water. It's beyond that. All right. It's far beyond that. That's the surface. And they want you to deal with the surface as opposed to dealing with what we really talking about. Because ultimately, what happens is the water that's in our bodies will now be out through a aspect of alchemy, so to speak. Now that becomes a digital type of awareness. You understand? Digital alchemy is what I call it. So this is what I'm saying. Every aspect of us, our bodies are what, 70-some% water or something, or whatever the numbers are. So now understand what happens. Think of what happens with the water and the data centers externally, that environment. We know it contaminates the water, things of that nature. We already know it. So now imagine what happens to us when we tapped in to signals from the data center in our bodies. What happens to us? What do people think it does to us, the water in our bodies? This is how deep this is. Our blood cells or cells in general. You mentioned mRNA. That's the purpose of the mRNA, is specifically to attack our cells. So this is what we're talking about. This is far beyond what most people could ever fathom. You cannot fathom the depths of psychopaths.
Check. When I went to the Moderna site, my motivation was to dispel the claim that the vaccines were not designed to rewrite the DNA.
Yes.
Because I had found information that was the case. Right. So, but whenever questioned, they denied it. So I went straight to the Moderna website, and maybe next time we'll go to the website unless they changed it. But it said that the purpose of the mRNA, it said it on their website, was to reprogram the DNA to create an operating system.
Yes, that is a cybernetic organism. That is bioconvergence. That is transhumanism, the merging of man and machine. And that is at a higher tier of transhumanism. People are already transhumanists just based on the fact that we interface with technology. That's the lower tier aspect of transhumanism. Now, once we're talking about it being infiltrated into our bodies, that's a higher tier of transhumanism, that interfacing.
Right. See, that's why I wanted to bring you on, because that's where I knew I was going to end up going with this. Now, you'll see I put up on the screen, here's a former Pfizer employee here in Kingston, who's also a current analyst for pharmaceutical and medical device industries. She came forward with indisputable documentation that should be shared with the entire world. I'm not sure where I got this from, but her main talking points were that she says all of the COVID-19 vaccines are bioweapons.
Yes.
2, there are 4 pegylated lipid nanoparticles in the COVID-19 vaccines. PEG equals polyethylene glycol. 1, the contents are cholesterol lipid which enables the vaccine instruments to be transported by the blood. The phospholipid adheres to the cell membrane to make it permeable. An ionizable lipid provides a positive ionic charge so the mRNA can enter the cell to reprogram the DNA.
Yes.
My editorial point.
And
a pegylated lipid made by Sinopec, a Chinese company, which I think we read into the record was also connected to Charles Lieber and the Wuhan Institute.
And that's not the only person that's saying that. Also, Dr. And I'm sure you remember Dr. Carrie Madej,
Yep, I
right?
do. Yep.
And she's still around and she's still, dealing with the science. So she primarily broke down the same type of information that you just broke down in regards to nanoparticles being carried through liposomes, which carry drugs and other substances into the tissue.
Yeah, and those visuals that I showed of those organisms and the nanoparticles I got from Carrie Madej.
Yes. Yeah. She's excellent.
She is excellent, and she's a scientist.
Yes.
But when she was speaking out about the truth of the vaccines, she was banned.
Yes.
And other doctors just like her were banned.
And some of them killed. They tried to take her out the other year, but she survived it. Yep.
Yeah. So, if they were really about trusting the science and providing truth, then why would anybody need to be banned?
Correct. Yes.
All right. So it looks like we've been on for almost 2 hours now.
Yes. All good.
More because our broadcast ended up getting delayed. But and we've only touched the tip of the iceberg. There's plenty of information that I was not able to show because we just don't have time.
Yeah, absolutely. We can do a part 2, brother.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do a part 2 because I definitely have a lot that I didn't. I wasn't able to get to at the moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, we could definitely do a part 2. Excellent job, brother. Excellent research, man. I appreciate you, brother. Anytime. And thank you for having this platform, and brother Jamal as well.
Absolutely, big ups and props to brother Jamal for being able to host this type of platform and and this information. And I also appreciate you, brother Sadiki, for providing your expertise and helping us to be able to connect the dots between this and your excellent work with transhumanism and being the pioneer that you are in the areas that you cover. And we're doing the work that we're called to do. And so we just have to keep doing it to be of the highest service that we can possibly can to our community.
That's right, brother. Thank you. Gratitude.
Gratitude to you too. So hope that you've found this information illuminating. I know it can be a bit disconcerting, because of things that are going on. But again, the key is in our consciousness and our state of mind. We create with our mind, we create with our emotions. So it's important for us to not fall prey to getting caught up in the emotion of fear, because that's what they want. And they want us to, because once we get into fear, we become irrational. We're not be able to make rational decisions. Okay. But, as both Sadiki and I would tell you, our innate technology, our spiritual beingness, our God source within us is stronger than anything that's external to us. So it's upon us to be able to tap into that, because that's what will help us to overcome the weapons of the enemy. So with that, again, thank Brother Sadiki for coming on. We'll pick this up again next time, and we'll see you again here on Journey in the South. Hotep, and thank you for tuning in.